I can barely bring myself to say those type of things. I see people saying things like pew-pews, right? Oh, the shooter at the Trump rally was using a pew-pew. Are you insane? What is happening that we've allowed ourselves to reach a point where we're saying these kind of things? We're talking about the Schmolocaust, and we have to say mustache man. All right, guys, we're back with the PEM podcast again. Gonna be looking at some new footage and videos today. Looks like we're probably going to get into Elon Musk, it sounds like. And one of the things that's been really frustrating for me as I've seen this environment in social media is the censorship that we're experiencing within these streaming channels and social media and things that you're not allowed to say. One of the things that shocked me about TikTok, for instance, was it seems like, TikTok came under fire from U.S. governments, including state governments, I believe, and were being banned. And they seem to respond by restricting what content, they were allowing out there, because prior to that, they did seem pretty free. So it appears to me that government is always our problem. And how governments and corporations are intertwined is rather murky. And if you ask me, certain corporations within our world are the government, basically. They are what's running our experience here. So what blew me away is when we got to a point in life where, I forget how many curse words there were. There's the 5 or whatever. I don't know. There's back when we listened to radio, back when you had regular television and it was the FCC and airwaves and how you received communications that way, there were the 5 curse words that you couldn't say. And I don't know what else there was. I'm sure there was viewpoints that you couldn't put out there because, again, it's always the same, right? People with the influence and power made sure that certain, viewpoints weren't put out there. So it's always been basically the same thing. But you could say normal words. Like, I was a little kid and we heard all the words that were normal. What's blowing me away is, like, right now I'm being careful even saying them because I don't know what it does to our videos if I start saying words. So we say grape, right? It rubs me such the wrong way to say the word grape. I can't stand it. What are we doing, right? I cannot stand that. Unalive, it blows my mind that we say something like that. Like, I don't see how everyone just accepted it and just kind of, I see all these people that just kind of like merged into it. How do you guys just do that? Like, and I'm just joining this. I'm late to the game and I'm like, okay, well, I see that's what's going on. I can barely bring myself to say those type of things. I see people saying things like pew-pews, right? Oh, the shooter at the Trump rally was using a pew-pew. Are you insane? What is happening that we've allowed ourselves to reach a point where we're saying these kind of things? We're talking about the Schmolocaust, and we have to say mustache man, apparently, because people were saying these things on some of the TikTok lives and the multi-guest channels that are out there. I can't tell you how much that rubs me the wrong way. It literally makes me want to vomit that we're in a place where we're restricting our speech. And the thing around, the history of Germany there, that we're now restricting our ability to talk about that, I think is extremely dangerous. I think that's a very dangerous thing. And who's interested in doing that, right? Whose best interest is that in for us to not talk candidly about historical events and people that played roles in some really nasty, tragic moments in history? It's mind-blowing to me. So I can't believe that we're participating in this. But it seems like these tech companies and these extremely powerful corporations just have such a hold on it, right? Like I'm all for not contributing to it. But if I just stop today, it won't make a difference. And I think most of us basically feel the same way, right? We're not banding together to say, hey, that's enough of this, right? Like, if we were more of you know, a community, a nationwide community, not even a global community, but enough people got together and said, you know what, we're not going to put up with this and we're not going to support this. We're going to discontinue use of whichever streaming channels and social media were instituting these type of restrictions and censorship. You would see a massive change because they'd lose their ass. But we don't do that. It's like, you know, and it's only like things with the George Floyd killing or some sort of like racially charged, you know, police brutality or something where people decide to hit the streets and say enough is enough. But yet we allow what I think is even more nefarious in the censorship side of things to go on, and we don't do anything about it. Nobody's coming together. And so, yeah, I have a major problem with that. I think we're allowing our freedoms to be eroded further and further to degrees that are quite frightening. When I was a kid, there were rallies where the KKK would show up and literally have their white supremacist crazy rallies. Now, we didn't share their viewpoints, certainly didn't see it as an attractive ideology, and we saw it as rather abhorrent and disgusting, but we also didn't see it as like, oh, we shouldn't allow these people to speak about this. That was my generation. It was like, no, freedom of speech, they can spout their ridiculous shit, their disgusting stuff, that's fine. And one of the problems I have with censorship, and I've said this before, that I believe that when you censor people further and further, that you don't get rid of the ideology. I think you harden it. I think you make it more prevalent under the surface, more subversive, more secretive. Do you think because you censored those people that they don't think those thoughts and that they don't, you know, gather in secret somewhere and talk about whatever crazy hatred they have on their mind or whatever is going on? That's ridiculous. These people are out there. And it solidifies, you know, they become the group that's ostracized, the group that's shunned, and that solidifies their position even more to hate those that have censored them and do this. Like, I don't know why we can't see that, and I'm sure the people at the top do see that. I don't think that their agenda has to do with supporting any greater cause or actual quote-unquote safety for us, right? I don't believe that's really what's going on here. I think we have people who have a lot of money who want to maintain their money the way it is and maintain their control, and I think it helps to keep us saying less, right? I think that helps their interests and helps the wealthy to make sure that we're sort of, you know, have our freedom of speech rights hamstringed in some way or another. And then you have all these people jump on the bandwagon from these different movements, whatever the movement is. Oh, you can't say that, you can't say this. Look, if you can have people speak their mind openly, that's the only way you're going to get them to change their mind. You know, there's a famous guy, and I always forget his name, but he's a blues musician, and he was able to convince KKK members to leave the KKK, even like some Grand Dragons or whatever, the leaders of their, you know, whatever chapter of the KKK. This man's a black man, the blues musician, and he would go and talk to these people, and he would let them speak their mind, you know, and they would spout a bunch of hateful stuff and crazy stuff, and he would listen. And then he would start to say, hey, you know, have you thought about some of the things you're saying here? There seems to maybe be a contradiction in this point you made. And he would let them speak their mind. If you can't speak your mind openly, you will never get people to come together. You'll never get people to change their mind. People out there who think we should support censorship, you guys need to start really taking a look, because I think there's a lot of people out there in the general public who think censorship should be implemented and that we should keep the children safe and we should keep everyone safe. Guys, you're not making anyone safe. That isn't making anyone safe. There's only an illusion of safety. And that's why, you know, we had done the motto for this channel was, it was solace, but solace, it turns out, was a bad translation because that's actually health, I believe. So it's securitas et libertas mutuo exclusae sunt. What it means is, you know, security and freedom, they can't exist together in the same room. There is a line so that we don't have chaos, but the more safety you seek, the less freedom you have. The less freedom you have, the more you edge towards more danger, actually. That's when you start to edge towards a place where you can't protect yourself from your own government, from your own employer, from, you know, your own social movements or whatever who decide they're going to institute some sort of tyrannical regime, and now you're, you know, victimized by that because now you can't speak your mind openly, because now you've been, had your rights taken from you because now you don't have the right to bear arms anymore. Your Second Amendment right is gone. Guys, this safety stuff, you have to take a look at it. Those of you who want to be safe out there, I take a very close and hard look at how dangerous the mind of safety is. It is a dangerous mindset. So, let's get into this one and see what Elon Musk is talking about. Should be interesting.
I don't have to answer questions from reporters. Don, the only reason I'm doing this interview is because you're on the X platform and you asked for it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I would not do this interview.
So do you think that you wouldn't get in trouble or you wouldn't be criticized for these things?
I'm criticized constantly. I could care less.
You don't care?
No, I don't.
Why not?
I don't think people should care what the media thinks about them. Right. They're terrible judges of character.
Even someone who has one of the biggest social media and biggest information platforms in the world, you don't care? You don't think that you have any X.com or you have any responsibility to the truth or moderating the platform?
You're conflating the truth with the media, and I think the media is not truthful.
Well, not with just the media. I mean, just the truth in general.
I care about the truth very much. That's why we have, for example, community notes on the X system.
That was interesting, a little sparring session there. I don't know who the interviewer was. I think I do want to get more involved with X because of what I've been hearing about Elon Musk's willingness to shy away from censorship. So that's a very encouraging aspect here. This is not the first time that I've heard that he seems to lean on the side of free speech. And someone like him could really make a change because it's in these monopolies that we lose, our autonomy. It's in these monopolies when you see how powerful Meta is, how powerful Google is, and their ability to restrict information. You need someone else out there that doesn't restrict information. And these things like Rumble and other streaming channels don't quite have the clout. X is pretty big, and Elon's huge. So I like the way this sounds. I hope he's genuine and all the way through, and that he continues to maintain that mentality, because I think we'll be doing some effort to provide content on X then and really be over there. We already looked into it a bit. We had some issues. We might have to shift accounts. I was able to get my Dorian account fully verified, so we might actually shift over there. Anyway, I fully support that message.
Everyone was a slave. Everyone.
Well, not everyone was a slave.
No, everyone was a slave.
Okay.
We are all descended from slaves. It's just a question of when. Was it more recent or less recent? That's it.
That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people who aren't able to take advantage of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of, simply because the color of your skin.
What advantage does the color of my skin give me?
There's an ease that you have in society that many people of color don't. And there's a legacy of racism that still continues on in this country.
If we keep talking about it nonstop, it will never go away. If we keep making it the central thing, it will never go away.
Why do you believe that?
I think we want to get away from making everything a race or a gender or whatever issue and just treat people like individuals.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm so tired of this race shit. It's gotten so old. Yes, there's racism. No one's saying there isn't. When we see racism, we should stamp it out. But it gets concerning, like some of this affirmative action stuff and things like that. At what point is there a reversal? I call it the swinging of the pendulum, right? We've seen it in feminist movements. We see it in racial movements. We see it in politically motivated movements. We see it in economically based movements. Oftentimes, what I see is maybe not the entire movement, but some core subset of the movement will be attempting to usurp power for their own, personal gains. And instead of seeking to stop the swinging of the pendulum to find the center point where there's an egalitarian environment, a true equality, you constantly see this pendulum moving and swinging, and people trying to pull the power to their side, and a lot of times through justification. Oh, we were downtrodden, we were subjugated, we were enslaved, we were mistreated for so long, so it's our turn. We now should be allowed to subjugate and enslave and mistreat this other group because it was done to us. That is something that I see happen. I've definitely seen it in the feminist movements. I've talked to feminist women who feel it's okay to abuse men because women were abused at some point in history, or whatever the argument is there, that there was this period of time where women were subjugated, and so therefore it's fair to do that back. Luckily, for instance, in South Africa, and someone like the titan that is Nelson Mandela, you'll see that is the true way to approach these things, is to try and find true egalitarian, equal environment for all, and not seek retribution or some sort of fixing of the past. So what happened in the past is done. Those that should be held accountable for atrocities should be held accountable. Very interesting what happened with Nelson, because he actually allowed for this amnesty that he did through this forgiveness, and that was amazing. I'm not going to get into the whole structure of how that happened and why, but it really saved the country from massive civil war and was the practical way to approach things, and it was great. Sadly, the country slipped a bit after he passed away. There's not many people that can live up to that example, but this whole idea of racism and kind of perpetuating those arguments. We've seen, I believe the guy's name was Tyree Nichols, right? Another one that was killed by police, killed by all black cops. He was a black kid, right? And no one really pointed that out, right? And then you went from George Floyd, which was clearly a white cop on a black guy, and then you had the riots and everything. It's like, nobody's saying racism doesn't exist, but it seems like we do keep it alive to a certain extent by talking about it. And I did like the way Morgan Freeman addressed this. Morgan Freeman really addressed this the same way that Elon Musk did right here. Is stop talking about it. Stop bringing it up. Why is it even, in surveys and things like this, the fact that you are even designated by race is wild to me. Doesn't matter. Why should it matter what color your skin is at all? It shouldn't play a role in any of the deciding factors of the way we interact with each other within society, and yet it is. So yeah, I agree with Elon. Starting to like Elon a little more.
I have never seen a room full of people so uncomfortable. Elon Musk was being interviewed last night at a New York Times event, and when he was asked about advertisers which left Twitter over anti-Semitic content, he had this to say.
There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger
I hope
today.
they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money,
Fuck off.
go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
But go fuck yourself. Is that clear?
Yes.
I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
When he name-dropped Bob, he was referencing Robert Iger, the chief executive of Walt Disney, who was at that event and was one of those who pulled their ads from Twitter. Musk said, "I care about the reality of goodness, not the perception of it. And what I see all over the place is people who care about looking good while doing evil. Fuck them."
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Gotta like that. How could you not like that? That is pretty great. Wow. Yeah. That is a very interesting thing because you don't see much of that. So, it's interesting because we just spent a good amount of time in the last episode talking about wealthy looking out for the wealthy. But maybe, I don't think that's always the case. Elon seems to be, he has some sort of conviction and values. That's refreshing. Because if he didn't have a conviction and values and he was only for the money, then, I don't think he would make those choices. But he has so much money. I think he's realized, what are you going to do? The only thing that I think he would need to be careful of is if it gets bad enough, they'll try and kill him too. That would be the concern for me. But, yeah. Wow. Pretty cool.
What percentage of your staff did you fire at Twitter? One of the great business stories of the year.
I think we're about 20% of the original size.
So 80% left.
Yes.
So
I mean, a lot of people voluntarily.
Sure, but it's 80% are gone from the day you took
That's
over.
correct. Yes.
So how do you run the company with only 20% of the staff?
It turns out you don't need all that many people to run Twitter.
But 80%? That's a lot.
Yes. If you're not trying to run some sort of glorified activist organization and you're not care that much about censorship, then you can really let go of a lot of people, it turns out.
So it sounds like the staffing is all there to push agendas and manage the censorship aspects, which, yeah, I think more and more, and that's old. That was old, right? So more and more now, the censorship is done automated. It's AI and logarithmic censorship based off of, I guess, keyword terms, things like that. And then I'm sure that behind that you have staffing, but I'm sure that those other, social media and streaming channels are implementing their censorship through automated systems and then backup staffing. So I imagine it's going to get to where he could operate with even less staffing. But I like the message. I am disgusted by censorship. So yeah, it makes me want to go on X a lot more. I think I'm going to start going on there more, actually. Yeah, I'm going to support it.
One of my sons, Saxon, who's sort of autistic, but he's kind of awesome. He's like an oracle of wisdom. I'd try to have like a family dinner at a restaurant once a week, just go out somewhere. And Saxon for a long time didn't understand why we were doing this. He's like, why are we going out? And then finally he had an epiphany and said, oh, the reason people go to restaurants is to hang out with strangers. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. Because you can get the same restaurant food delivered. You can call your friends over. Yeah. But you know what you can't get unless you go to a restaurant is hanging out with strangers. So we actually like hanging out with strangers.
Very interesting. Food delivery is not the same as fresh food, guys. So I don't fully agree with that. However, Elon is so rich, and even if you were far less rich as him, you can afford a chef at home. Multiple chefs. You probably have different chefs come in. You could have a Thai food chef come in. You could have a French food chef come in. You could have an American fusion chef come in. Right? Like so there's the argument there. Like he doesn't have to go out. There's no doubt about it. He could get the best food in the world, made right at his home. I don't believe that delivery is the same as eating in the restaurant when it comes to the food quality. I can tell you that is definitely the truth. Right? Nothing like a hot plate coming out. And some restaurants serve really great food. So, hanging out with strangers, is that why we go to restaurants? I think, I think there's an atmosphere. I don't know that you're there for the strangers, but there's an atmosphere, a buzz, a vibe, a feeling that comes from being around others, and in this case, often strangers, that we somehow need that feeling. We seek that to some degree, right? So I think it makes sense there that that's what that's about. But some places I go for the food because they do serve great food, and having it delivered would not be as good. But yeah, I think we're constantly seeking a sense of community, and unfortunately, where we've sought it the most has been in these electronic formats here, and this is not a community, not really. It's an illusion of some sort that keeps us kind of dopamine addicted to what we're doing here. So when you go to a restaurant, you do get a little bit of authenticity, regardless of how small or brief it is. You get to interact with people in general and strangers, and have a human experience, which you don't get here in front of the screen. So I kind of see where he's coming from. I see where he's coming from sometimes, and I think for people who don't allow themselves to over isolate, some people get very depressed and they just isolate and isolate and isolate. But a lot of people who are single and alone and lonely will go to restaurants probably for that reason, right? Get out, interact with a server, have a drink. People go to bars for that type of reason, although I don't like to drink alcohol too much. It does not make me feel good. But that's what you're seeking, is human interaction. So absolutely, it's one of the major top driving forces for us as human beings. It's what leads to a majority of the mental health issues. People are experiencing some sense of isolation. So absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense there, of course. All right, guys, that's it. Looks like we're going to be supporting X more. I'll tell you that for sure. I'm going to be getting on X more. Man, I'm so sucked into this meta right now because it's where a lot of the advertising is. But I wonder if I can find some ability to advertise on X better. You know, I haven't explored it as much. It took me forever to understand the meta space. And so now I'm like sucked into that. I think I'm going to spend more time on X. I got to say, I like the messaging here. I mean, they're short excerpts. I don't know enough about Elon, another person. I'm not spending my days researching all these folks. But I did hear prior to this that he was pro freedom of speech and was not partial to censorship. And man, I got to say, I think censorship is a dangerous, dangerous thing that threatens us deeply. I think it's an existential threat to our freedom and our ability to even protect ourselves from our government and other groups and corporations that would try to subjugate us in one form or another. So I think censorship is a really nefarious thing, and I love that, you know, some of the things that Elon said in those excerpts that we just watched. So yeah, I think we're going to be hopping on X. But all right, guys, that's going to be it for this one, and yeah, we'll see you next time.